I'm Bily Foster, and I'm that iPad guy. Called that because I've almost always got an iPad with me, and in some cases, two. This week, it's all about the mountain lion. On Wednesday morning, Apple released its latest iteration of its computing OS dubbed Mountain Lion. And of course, it comes chock full of new features and new things to learn about, new bugs, 200 new features to be specific. And of course, we're going to dive into each and every one of them and understand the when, why, and where it was added or why it was modified or changed. So, starting with feature number 1. Just kidding. This is, of course, only a 67-minute podcast, and we don't have that kind of time. So we'll just hit the most important ones, or the ones that I think are going to be important to you. I've narrowed them down into 3 basic sections. New apps, new features, and what's coming, which is an odd thing. So for the new apps, which is tied to the features, iCloud-ish. More of iCloud features get rolled out with Mountain Lion. You can now save some of the things that you've created to the cloud. I haven't found an iDrive type replacement so that you can drag your documents to it, but it is integrated into things like Pages, Keynote, Numbers. And if you haven't purchased any of those, you can at least get a taste of what it's like by using TextEdit. I assume that down the road, applications will have access to save to the iCloud. For now, it's really limited. But as that grows, I'm sure that that's the goal, is to have the programmers take their programs and have them saved to the cloud. And the way it works is even if you're offline, you still can save to the cloud. It just puts the file in a temporary location that's allocated to the application. It's called sandboxing. This is the first in the next set of several steps that Apple is going to be taking in making the computer turn more into an appliance and less like a computer, at least in the general sense. It still will, of course, be a computer, but they want to remove the concept of a file system from a user's point of view. They want to make it seem like it's all seamless, and they also want to provide the most secure environment they can by starting to lock down what you have access to as a programmer, like they have with iOS. For example, look here at Gatekeeper in the security and privacy settings. You'll now see an option to only install applications that either come from the Mac App Store or from the Mac App Store and identified developers, also known as those who paid to register with Apple, or you get the Wild Wild West, no holds bar, watch what you load, freedom-filled style, the way computers have been since the way they were created. But that is a more dangerous route for the general public. So, good or bad, I leave that up to you. I do think in a general sense, it's good. As much as I've done help desk support and seen how people take care of computers or don't, I can appreciate the type of security they have inside of iOS. But like I said, this starts to change the computer in a general sense. There's always going to be people like me, and there's going to be hackers that will dig a little bit deeper into the system. And I'm not a hacker by any means. However, I've been known to open up terminal and tweak a setting or two. But I know people that want to have access to that file system, so they know exactly what's going on and where things are going. But I digress. That's a topic for another podcast. Right now, back to the tour. Continuing with the Back to the Mac campaign that Apple launched with Lion, we now have reminders, notes, and messages from iOS integrated into the operating system. This is great to have these all synced up with my iPad and my iPhone. So I put it in once, it shows up on all the other devices and my computer now. Now, Notes was there before, but it was inside of Mail, and you had to have your Mail open in order to have your notes. But now that Notes is its own little application, you can have access to them without having to have the Mail system open. And this is great for me because I have a old MacBook Pro that has a small SSD drive in it, and I don't want to have the Mail on it because I have a lot of email and that fills up the drive. So now I can access just the Notes through the Notes apps. Messages is probably my most used app since I can use it to communicate with my friends, family, coworkers, and associates all through iMessage, which goes either to their iPads or iPhones and now their computers. This is a really big advantage that Apple has by being tied into the operating system. You don't actually have to have messages opened in order to get a message. Once you've set up the system, you don't have to monitor it or have it open. Yet, if you get a message, bing, it pops up over in the notification system. Click on it, opens up the application, and gives you the message. So now there's this tightly integrated messaging system and network that runs through all the computers that Apple has, as well as the mobile devices. And that's a real big advantage. And speaking of notification, the addition of Notification Center has been great so far, although it's not perfect. For example, I'm using Skype, and I get Skype messages, and they don't seem to be caught by notification system. So they just pop up like normal. Now, I assume that this will change with a newer version of Skype. In the meantime, there's an app called Hiss that's out there that I'm trying out that people recommended. However, I haven't been able to get it to work. Once I do, I'll report back. But right now, I'm just dealing with it. In the meantime, you'll see reminders, messages, and email messages show up inside a notification center. One of the coolest things that they've added is you can take 2 fingers and swipe from the right side of your trackpad on over to the left, and do it from the edge, and it will slide your screen over and give you the notification bar, much like when you pull down on your phone or your iPad. And then you see your list of the different notifications. Game Center has also been added, but it's more of a I don't access it on my iPhone or my iPad either, really, so I'm no expert. Instead, I'm going to move on to the new features. I know I mentioned Gatekeeper up in the app section, but it's not really an app, it's a feature. It's just added to the security panel, so I wanted to clarify that here. Also, things like Power Nap is another feature, but it's kind of listed as an app on Apple's webpage, and is even given an icon as if it were something you could launch. But there's no app for Gatekeeper or for Power Nap. These are more settings than anything. 2 of my favorite features of Mountain Lion, and are the most welcomed of anything, are dictation and AirPlay. First, dictation. It's the one that's going to get the most use. And if you have a really good microphone, it works really, really, really well. My only issue is that dictation is not local. So what you say gets sent up to Apple's server, gets converted, and then the text is sent back down. I do wish this was done locally so that I know I could use it offline, aka when I'm on the road. I guess if I'm offline, I'm just going to have to try and rely on my Nexus 7. But that's, again, another podcast for another day. The dictation feature gets fired off by hitting the function key twice. You, of course, can go into settings and change that to a custom key if you'd like, but that's the default. And then when you hit the function key twice, the familiar little boop boop happens, and a microphone icon pops up. And as you start talking, you can see a little level indicator in the microphone showing that it's picking up your voice. And then when you finish speaking, you hit the function key one more time. The audio is sent up to Apple's server, gets encoded, converted into text, and sent back down and pops up in the little dialog box. When I was trying to use the onboard microphone of my iMac, it didn't really work so well, but once I switched to my really good USB snowball microphone from Blue Microphone, it works spectacularly. This microphone. I can see using this when I need to write really long emails or articles. I definitely use this feature a lot on my iPad, so I'm going to be using it on the iMac and, of course, the MacBook Air as long as I have internet connection. The other feature that I'm really keen on, but may not use a whole lot, but when I do use it, it's going to be really, really convenient. Here's what happens. I'm, of course, surfing on my computer, and I find something interesting that I want to share with Matt. So typically what I do is then I open up my iPad, and since I'm surfing in Chrome, I usually open up Chrome on the iPad and pull up the same tab, and then I AirPlay mirror that to the Apple TV. Well, no more! Now I can just hit the AirPlay button on my MacBook Air, and it will send the screen directly to the Apple TV. The audio and everything comes out, and it just works great. It works beautifully. So that's going to be a real time saver for me. And I can see some other real-world applications that are practical. For example, I could have clients come over, and instead of me having to remote into their box so that I can see their screen when they're having trouble, they can now push their screen to my computer, and I can see and watch what they're doing and help them troubleshoot whatever it is that's happening. The only drawback is that, of course, that they have to be here on site. But again, that's generally how some of the troubleshooting stuff happens when I'm working with someone. So I could also see a situation where you can have a conference room with Apple TV hooked up to a projector, and then people can come in and simply push their screens to the projector without any wires. No cables, just simply hop onto the network, push to the Apple TV. In fact, now that I think about it, I'm going to need to get a converter so I can have my Apple TV hooked up to my projector, and that way I can do the same. Like I said, there are around 200 new features that I'll be exploring. Not all of them are major or worth noting, and some of them are just background things and refinements. These are the big ones that I feel really matter or are the most people are going to care about. If you've got any questions, though, please feel free to tweet me at @iPadGuy, and I'll try and get it answered into a future podcast. Speaking of the future, something that Apple is doing lately that's a little annoying is telling you features that are coming soon but aren't there when the product launches or are in beta. For example, Siri on the iPhone 4S is still technically beta. And now what they're doing is Twitter and Facebook integration. It's listed as coming this fall. Why it's not already in the system, I'm not sure. I guess they didn't feel it was worth holding off the whole operating system to get those added, but I don't know. I don't know if this is a case of what happens now that Steve is gone. I guess only time will tell, but I'm certainly going to be keeping my eye on what's happening and the way they're conducting business. In the meantime, my doorbell just rang, and I think that that's my replacement Nexus 7. If you want to know more about that, check out my new blog at bradsblog.org. It's an Aussie blog that hired me to do some writing, and I'll be doing my Android-focused things over there. But that wraps up another episode of That iPad Guy. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, and visit thatipadguy.com to subscribe. See you next time. Did I do that?